First on BBC One.
Good evening and welcome to episode 31 of the History CV of Britain. My name's Paul and today I'll be interviewing Dr John Hart on the Scholars of Albion. Very excited for that. The last 10 minutes have been extremely stressful, as is often the case, but everything seems to be working now, so I will press ahead very quickly. I hope you're all well, everyone. What a week I've had. It's just been an incredible 2 or 3 days. So much to tell you, and I don't want to keep my guest waiting for too long, so I'll try and be as brief as I can. I visited Penshurst Place with Adrian Gilbert on Thursday, which was a great experience, a lovely day. And I went back to his home in Kent and interviewed him on the Blood of Avalon. And I've got some editing to do now, so I'll be doing that during the week. And fingers crossed, hopefully, I should be able to upload it to this channel before the weekend. That's the plan anyway, but I've got quite a lot of work to do. On the subject of Adrian, he's released a video this week called, come on, Paul, you can do it. Are you ready to leave the Earth? The Stargate is open. I think that's what it's called. Words to that effect anyway. I've only just watched it. It's very, very good. It's kind of an impromptu chat with Adrian. And I highly recommend that you check it out. Okay. Right. A lot has happened in the last couple of days with me on a subject that some of you probably aren't particularly interested in because it's recent history as opposed to very ancient history. So I'm talking about the Whitechapel murders of 1888. The last couple of days have been incredible on that front. I can't tell you too much yet, but I'm writing a book on the subject, and it's a fictional book. And but I say we because I'm writing it with someone else. We're absolutely committed to keeping this as truthful as possible, so all the facts, etc. And I've stumbled across a man recently who's quite famous in the world of martial arts, who I'll just come out and say he solved the case. It's undeniable as far as I'm concerned. The mystery has been going on for 137 years and now it's solved. I've got no qualms about saying that at all. So I won't mention his name yet because I'll be interviewing him on Saturday, this coming Saturday. So at some point the following week, that will be uploaded to my channel or possibly my co-author's channel. You can check out her channel. It's called Wuthering Nights with Sarah Mondaini. And she's very interested in the paranormal. So yes, so much I want to say on that subject, and perhaps we'll do a video. Me and Sarah will do a video this week prior to interviewing the guy that I've mentioned, and we'll just kind of introduce the subject to you if you don't know much about it. But it's the story that goes underneath the murders is just incredible, and it encompasses so many facets of politics, religion, race. It's just indescribably interesting as far as I'm concerned, and it's quite relevant, and I don't want to get too political, but it's quite relevant to the times that we're living in today, believe it or not. So please look out for that. I'll probably be doing more Whitechapel murder videos in the near future. So I don't know, maybe one or two of you aren't particularly interested in that because we're only going back 137 years as opposed to, 1500 years, 2000 years. But it is, as I say, it's very pertinent what happened back then to what's going on today. I can assure you of that. Right. Okay. So it's that time. Scholars of Albion. Oh, blimey, before I bring Dr. John Hart on, I've just realised I need to set something up very quickly on my computer, which I forgot to do because of the drama of the last 10 minutes. So I need to open that up. Okay, and then I'll be able to share screen, hopefully, in a few minutes' time. Brilliant. Okay, so without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Dr. John Hart, otherwise known as John of Tadley. Hello, John.
Greetings, Paul.
How are you?
I'm very well.
Good.
I'm interested to hear that you're interested in the Whitechapel murders. I'm not, but I expect to be captivated by you.
Well, I hope so. It's going to be a book and video project, so I'll be sharing some of the information on my channel. And it is a very interesting period of our history. Much of it, even though it's quite recent, much of it has been forgotten, I think. And as I said before, it encompasses a lot of politics, a lot of race and religion and all sorts of different things. So there is that aspect to it as well. Anyway, John, so I've got you on here today to talk about the Scholars of Albion. Now, this is quite a broad subject, isn't it? So what angle are you taking on this?
I'm going to give you a super potted analysis of British scholarship. So it's not difficult. And I've got a few thoughts on the principles of scholarship, what we as a group of independent scholars ought to be trying to achieve.
Okay, brilliant. Right.
And I can tell you that scholarship is learning or erudition, particularly in the humanities. So we're talking about the human interest in culture, language, arts, and so on. So it's scholarship is a word we use in the humanities, history, rather than science and so forth.
Brilliant. All subjects that I'm extremely interested in. So there's a section, John, in the National CV on scholarship. So shall I attempt to share it to screen now?
Attempt away.
I'll walk everyone through this as I go along. So I'm going to now share screen when the computer is ready. That's it. Brilliant. Right. Okay. And now, hopefully, at any second, you should be able to see on your screens the National CVpedia of Britain, the finest website on the internet. Now, if you Google this, you will arrive at on the homepage, obviously. Now, if you go to CVpedia, which is, as you can see, just there, 2 lines down, scroll down to where you see here, section 6, Marvels. And then if you look down here at 6.9, you will see scholarship. And hopefully that's what you can all see on the screen now. Okay. So, John, what are the headlines from the National CV on scholarship, and who are the big hitters?
The scholarship section is quite long and miscellaneous, and I hope people will enjoy it at some point. But we only need to bounce off about 3 or 4 lily pads. And the first one is already on your screen. The Venerable Bede, of course, he's regarded as England's first historian and so forth. He actually, what's less known is that he caused the adoption of the Christian dating system of BC AD, which we use to this day. Now what he is one of the monkish scribes that we were talking about the last time I was on. And the other monkish scribes, as we well know, are Gildas, Nennius, Tasilio. And then so I'm zooming you through historians here. So this is the lineage that gives us our own dear Marshall Abrahams, of course. And so after the monkish scribes, you get the medieval historians, Geoffrey of Monmouth, Henry of Huntingdon, William of Malmesbury, and so forth. Then you zoom to the Tudor historian Holinshed and his team in the 1500s, and then you're into the 1600s, which is Enderby, Percy Enderby, and then in the 1700s, which is on there somewhere, you get to Edward Gibbon, who is the decline and fall of Roman Empire, and then you get to the 1800s, and almost nobody remembers this guy, but it's Lord Acton, who said power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So he's the guy who came up with that. In the same 1800s, you've got Arnold Toynbee, he's on there somewhere, and he came up with the phrase industrial revolution. And then you're into the 1900s, and you've got A.J.P. Taylor, and then you've got, in that same era, you've got E.P. Thompson, Christopher Hill, G.M. Trevelyan, G.R. Elton, Hugh Trevor Roper, and if you like something a little bit offbeat, Lawrence Waddell, who gets a nice in there. So he's a great one. But so go back to the top of that, and you've got the second one in that list. If you go to the second one, you've got Alcuin of York. Yes. Now, Alcuin of York is a phenomenal polymathic scholar who was at the court of King Charlemagne. So whereas Bede was in around 700, Alcuin was one or two generations later, and he systematized the way we write. So capital letters and lowercase letters and sentences and paragraphs. This is all Alcuin. We use Alcuin's system. And it's amazing that we did this. And, Alcuin of York did it. Now, he was a polymath. So I'm going to give you a blast through the polymaths of Britain in the spirit of the National CV, where everything happens very quickly and briefly. You've got Adelard of Bath in the 1100s, Roger Bacon, who in about the 1200s, I have a statue of Roger Bacon in my garden because I admire him so much. And among the things, he was a great empiricist. Empiricism is a philosophical idea of trusting the senses. It's very British technique of ratiocination. And then you get to William of Ockham in the 1300s, and that was, of course, Ockham's razor. Now, Ockham is a place in Surrey. I've driven through it, and he lived there. And he said, plurality is not to be assumed without necessity, i.e., opt for the simplest explanation. It's the principle of parsimony. We do that. But it's not to say that the simplest is always true. I mean, you can say the sun goes round the earth. That's simple. It's also untrue. So, but it's basically the principle of parsimony. Then you get to William Gilbert in the late 1500s. He was a philosopher. He said the earth is a magnet, and he inspired Galileo. And Galileo said in his foreword that he was inspired by William Gilbert, who was also the physician of Elizabeth I. Francis Bacon in the same era, a great philosopher of science. And then we're doing polymaths here at record speed. We go to Thomas Young around about 1800s, who translated the started the translation of Egyptian hieroglyphs and got to the wave theory of light. He was a phenomenal polymath. So we've done historians. You've got about 15 historians, and now you've got half a dozen polymaths. And finally, well, actually, no, not. Penultimately, I'm going to give you antiquarians, because these are the most charming group of all. So we gave you historians at the beginning here, and that's really where Marshall Abrahams fits in, our dear Marshall. That's her lineage. But the lineage of people like Melissa Campbell and Hugh Evans are the antiquarians, I would argue. And so you've got here John Leyland, William Camden, Robert Cotton, who donated his library to the British Library, William Dugdale, William Stukely, the great William Stukely, John Aubrey, who named the holes at Stonehenge, Alfred Watkins, the straight track.
Straight track, yeah.
And then we've got to Alexander Thom and Anne Macaulay. on the stone circles. Those are your antiquarians. So that's the third group. Now, if you go right down, I don't know where you are at the moment. Ah, that's good. Stay there. Stay there. Stay there. I'm sure that's quite close to where we need to be.
I think so.
Go to ancient history. If you can find, slightly above that. Slightly above that. There, ancient history. Now go down. There's Thomas Young, who I just mentioned. Yep. Now you get to that Henry Rawlinson.
Yes. This
is my list of archaeologists, and this is just, we can just rip snort our way through these in about 20 seconds. Henry Rawlinson, he was the 1800s, deciphered Persian cuneiform and was the scholar who first established the existence of the Sumerians. I mean, that is a tremendous effort. His protege was George Smith, who discovered the Epic of Gilgamesh, which contains the creation myth and also a great flood. When he died at a relatively young age, he was replaced by none other than E.S. And then you look down that list, we've got Austin Layard. He discovered Nineveh. Henry Sayce, he discovered the Hittites and deciphered their script. Arthur Evans not only discovered the Minoans, but named them, because he named them after King Minos of Greek mythology. And then you've also got, he's not actually in this list, but John Lubbock, he invented the terms Paleolithic and Neolithic. And then you get right down to, you've got William Flinders Petrie, the greatest Egyptologist. In fact, he's the father of methodological archaeology. And then you've got a student, if you go a bit further, you've got a student of Petrie. No, I think we've gone too far there. Maybe he's not on there. Is Howard Carter, of course, who is Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, with all that story about the curse and all that.
Yeah.
Then I think they are on here is Michael Ventris. So we're in the mid 1900s now. Yeah. Michael Ventris and John Chadwick, who deciphered Minoan Linear B. So what I've just hurtled you through is Britain's historians. What else did I do? Polymaths.
Antiquarians.
The antiquarians. And now we've just done the archaeologists as well. Britain has a phenomenal track record of scholarship. I rest my case.
Quite incredible. And I'm pleased to see that on here as well, John, you've included Iolo Morganwg, the much maligned Iolo.
Oh, he's an excellent fellow. Excellent fellow.
And William Comyns Beaumont.
Comyns Beaumont, another excellent fellow, though they're off the scale when it comes to the mainstream, but I love them.
Yes.
All right thinking. But I see Howard Carter's there. I have got him in there.
Oh, yeah, there he is.
Yeah, that's good. So I've also got Alan Wilson in there. Look at that.
You have at the bottom, yeah.
It's a broad church. But I wouldn't go too far on this, because there's a load of science in there, which I'm not going to give you, and a load of maths and a load of statistics and stuff. So you don't need any of that. But although metrology is of interest to some of our audience, but those we basically invented the modern world.
Brilliant. Yes, well, there's a lot of information there to back it up, certainly. Brilliant. Okay. Right, I'll just stop sharing screen then, shall I, John?
Yeah, we're done. That's it. You've just had that. We've hurtled through the history of scholarship. I'll be
brilliant stuff.
Well, I'll be testing our viewers and listeners later.
Okay. Talking of which, just one more question for you, John, before I take a look into the chat room to see who's with us this evening. You're like me, John, in that you have broad interests, but first and foremost, you're a scientist. So how does the thought process compare between scientific and historical studies, would you say?
Well, in science, philosophers of science say how scientists do things, and I'm not at all sure we do them, but I will say that there is a process called induction, where you take general observations and reveal a principle. And then there is deduction, where you have that principle and then you apply it to a different case. But in fact, a key figure in this is William Whewell, although he's spelt "we" well, in the mid 1800s. He was a contemporary of Darwin, and he was something, I forgot what he is actually, something like the Master of Trinity College, Cambridge. And he put, what you've got to do in this life, as you know well, Paul, and perhaps you're going to do this with your Jack the Ripper piece, is put something into the celestial display cabinet, something you're actually proud of. And it doesn't need to be a piece of writing or a book or anything. It can be a toy you whittled for your infant child. It can be a plant that you've grown up from. Anything you like, but it's got to be something for the celestial display cabinet. And William Whewell in the mid 1800s came up with the word scientist. Wow. It was quite cool. But he also said there was different ways of modes of intellection when it came to science, humanities, and all the rest of it. But he didn't just say science. He said there are sciences like physics and chemistry and parts of biology which are actually non-historical. But there are other parts of it. I mean, parts of biology, for example, are evolutionary biology, and physics. There's cosmology, which really is history. And then you've got geology, which is history. And paleontology, which is fossils, those history. And he was pondering, this is around about the time of Darwin, and they say, how do they do this? And it was the crucial concept was inference. What the concept was, inference to the best explanation. You see, you've got how the situation is now, and you've got to infer how it was earlier on. You can't do an experiment on it. You can't, induction and deduction are a complete waste of time. What you've got to do is infer, it's inference to the best explanation. And that's how we do it. All these people, our chums, do this, write their books. It's the inference to the best explanation. Mm. There is a fancy word for this, but it's so rubbish, I can't be bothered to give it you. So inference to the best explanation is precisely how our mode of intellection in historical studies.
Brilliant stuff. Thanks for that, John. Okay, just take a quick breather, maybe have a slurp of ale. And
tea.
Blimey. Okay, let's just say hello to a few people that are with us this evening. Good evening, Marshall Abrahams. And good evening, Hugh Evans. Merlin's boy is with us again. Hello, Merlin's boy. And he's just doing his ironing as he's watching this. So sorry to hear that, Merlin's boy. Good evening, David J. Melissa Campbell is with us. There's a new name on me. Lord Batty. Good evening, my lad. Hope you're well. MD is with us as well. Andrew Christie. Good to see you, Andrew. Wouldn't be the same without you. Stephen Lashbrook is here. Robert Paul Corliss. And oh, look, there's my co-author, Wuthering Nights with Sarah Mondaini. Hello, Sarah. How are you? Hi, Paul. Just a quickie for the algorithm. I'll catch up properly later tonight. Brilliant stuff. Well, there's lots of people here. Meg is here. Meg W. Agatha Velvet. Brilliant stuff. Good to see you all. Thanks for joining us. Right. Okay. So where was we? Okay. I'll tell you what, John, can you give us a heads up on some of the scholarly principles you think that we ought to notice?
Yes, it's extremely presumptuous of me, but I am going to give you a thought or two. I've actually been involved in about 4 book-length production, including 2 actual books, 1 PhD thesis and an ebook, which is the CVPD of Britain. So I have no other qualifications and experience, but it's obvious that scholars are obliged to get as close as possible to the truth. So they should try not to axe grind or indulge in boosterism or bias and these sort of things. And I would claim that you have to be a 2-eyed scholars who take notice of all relevant evidence. 1-eyed scholars, particularly those funded by the taxpayer, tend to ignore independent researchers like us. We need to give them no excuse at all for monocularity. We need to be learned, even erudite. I will give you a model. A model is one you put me onto, actually, Paul, was the late Alexander Waugh. You see, he was involved in the Shakespeare authorship question. Now, somebody asked the granddaughter of Stratford Will if her grandfather had been a poet, and she said no. And yet generations of Stratfordian scholars have decided that he was the author of the plays, and it was not actually the obvious candidate, which is the Earl of Oxford, who bunged money at him every year just to be his front man. So you get this. All you've got to do is just not be a twit, and these scholars are barking up the wrong tree. A crucial concept in scholarship. So we've got truth and two-eyed scholarship. We've got to look at all the evidence available. The other thing is that you've got a crucial thing in science and scholarship. Similarly, is communication. You're not a scholar unless you communicate, frankly. And if you're not a scientist, if you don't communicate your findings, if you keep them to yourself, you aren't a scientist or a scholar. Darwin is the case that Darwin said that treatises, lovely word, were almost as important as original work. By treatise, he meant long, systematic expositions, or as we would call them now, books. So, and this is, as we all know, this is a book-strewn landscape, and books are very difficult to write. I've not written one in this space except my ebook of the CVpedia, but I have written a couple of other books. But they're as important as ever. Reading long pieces on screen is a pain, but you want to be able to develop your ideas in different ways. You don't want to. I mean, in my scientific activities, I put in a scientific paper, and it's a part of the overall picture of which I'm hoping to paint. And you want the reader to see the whole thing. And the book is an extraordinary invention. In fact, it has been said that books are cleverer than their authors, and I think that's true. So, but you've got to be very wary. You see, publication is a self-invasion of privacy. You want to be very careful what you say. Don't make it worse. I read a science book recently where the bloke said that he was married, divorced, and then remarried. This is a book on science. And I'm thinking to myself, why are you doing this? Why are you telling us this? I don't need to know this. I've just read a philosophical book, a short philosophical book, where the bloke decided to give us his opinions on the inheritance tax. And I'm thinking, I don't need this from a philosopher. You know, this sort of stuff is just rubbish. But anyway, one of the things you've got to do is be sure to cite every notable prior contribution. I mean, there's no excuse really in the days of internet searching. Just do it. Say everybody. And I mean, I've got a book on my desk at the moment, which I will not waggle in front of you because he failed. It's on metrology, so our old friend Weights and Measures. And he fails to mention, he mentions A.E. Berriman, who had a book published in 1953 called Ancient Metrology, only to dismiss him in a sentence. Then he doesn't mention John Michell. He doesn't mention John Neal.
John Neal, yeah.
He doesn't mention you've had on your channel. He doesn't mention Vivian Lineker. He doesn't mention Robert Tye, who you've had on your channel. He doesn't mention any of them. So, and he says in his preface that he took 27 years to write this book. I'm very carefully not identifying this individual. He should have taken 28 years and given. I don't actually, I don't trust the book because he's not up with the pace. See, but the other thing is, not only do you have to cite sagely and fully, but you have to give credit where it's due. And there's a strange rule about credit. If the more glory you give away, the more you get. So it's actually hugely productive to give away credit and glory. Just give it away, and it will come back. And it's a very strange, thing. I mean, I'll give you another book. Again, I'm afraid it was written by an American, who tells us that I won't waggle this one. I could do, but I won't waggle it either. Where he told us the ancient Egyptians used advanced technology and to cut the stones and so forth for the pyramids on the Giza Plateau. And I'm sure he's absolutely right. He took to page 112 to tell us that it was William Flinders Petrie who first came up with this idea, because William Flinders Petrie, who I believe is the father of Egyptology, saw the cut marks on the stones. He said, and so he surmised that they had diamond-tipped saws, which I'm sure they did. I mean, it's just, he should have been on page 1, and he's page 112, and you just think, it's just ridiculous. Why? How could you do this? So the other, don't nick anything. I'm sorry to say this, don't plagiarize. I read a Nature article, and there was a couple of paragraphs which I knew came from a book which I'm extremely familiar with. And I thought, that is just outrageous. And then there was a philosophical article where he didn't acknowledge that he'd borrowed something from the philosopher John Locke from the 1600s. And I could, even the phraseology was the same. Like, oh, God. Anyway, that's a bit of a rant. I'm enjoying this. I'll give you a little bit more. Books now tend to have titles and subtitles. They didn't used to have subtitles. And I don't have any problem with that at all. But I would be tempted, to our authors in our chat box, to lose the word "the." There is very little to be gained from the word "the." And now I do have a book. Actually, I will show this, even though it will come out the wrong way round. This is a book by Helen Carr. I wonder if I've got my mirror. Ooh, I wonder if I can do this mirror thing.
Wouldn't be the same without your mirror, John.
There we go. Now then, let's see if we can get this. There we go. So there is the book, right? It's Helen Carr, and it's called Sceptred Isle. And if I go down, it's a new history of the 14th century. And this is a very fine book, but the period is that of the Black Death and all kinds of mayhem. And you're going to need a psychiatrist after you've read this, because or at least you're going to have sedatives, because it is terribly distressing. But you get to page 48. Now, this is a good book, but you've got to like that period to get stuck in on it, because you're talking about bubonic plague and all this. And I get to page 48 and I read, I'm in a northern castle, and it says here that the stone walls are 2 meters thick. And you just think, oh God, you can imagine, we're in the 1300s, and you can imagine what the master mason said. My lord, I think we need stone walls that are 2 meters thick. And the Lord will say, what's a meter? And it's, well, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, because in 400 or 500 years' time, we'll be ahead of us, because they'll really, they'll invent the meter. And why bother? It's hopeless. Yeah. Anyway, that was me having yet another rant. I've got more ranting if you want.
Good. Glad to hear it. I'm still struggling to understand how somebody can write a book on metrology and not mention John Michel or John Neal. How is that possible?
Well, he's an American person, and they do tend not to cite British persons. I'm sorry if there's any American people watching, but they do tend to not do it. I don't know how you can write a book on metrology without citing all the authorities. I mean, how can you do that? But the other thing you want to do as an author, and I've always done this, is show your work to somebody who is some kind of expert, or at least on the same page as you. And this is called, as you well know, it's called peer review. And peer review was invented in Britain, you'll be glad to know, as part of the Royal Society. Those are the science guys. And we're in 1660 something or other, 1665, I think, when they came up with the world's first journal, science journal, which still exists. It's called the Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society. And the editor sent his, he got things in that he didn't understand. So he sent them out to people well versed in the field, and so peer review was born. You send it out to people and you say, what do you think of this? And what you see, peer review is not, it's not one person knocking another person or being hoity-toity. I regard it as a howler hunt. You're saving somebody from some ghastly error, and you're just, almost giving it to a mate, really, and just saying, what do you think of that? And he says, well, page 3 is tosh. And I've done this. I've had an essay. I've written an essay and I got people to peer review it. And I remember the author, Ralph Ellis, said, this is rubbish on the page or other. And he was absolutely right. It was. It was the maths was all over the place. And that's what you do. And thank you, Ralph.
Yeah, talking of Ralph, he's had a peer-reviewed paper on the causes of ice ages, I think.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
No, I think he did one on climate change years ago, and it was stratospheric in every sense. It was really a splendid effort.
Yes, I've also heard with peer-reviewed papers, John, that if I was a scientist and I wrote my paper and I gave it to another scientist and I said, look, can you read this and give me a good review? And if you do that, when I get your paper, I'll do the same.
No, well, I've never come across that. All I ever get is beaten up. So, but the thing of what is absolutely wonderful, I mean, I know this sounds a bit mercenary, but I regard it as free consultancy. I've done a few peer reviews, not that many in science, but I have done a few. And to have somebody who's very smart comment on your work is absolutely tremendous. I mean, it's a brilliant system. The problem is that the publishers are making too much money and peer reviewing is free. So I've never been paid for any peer reviewing I've ever done. And it's just, so it's not, but I give you another thought to sort of move the conversation on. You had Matt Apocalypse,
yeah,
wonderfully named Matt Apocalypse. And he said, you want to get your ideas before you dive into the literature, just get your ideas straight on the data or whatever it is. And I think it was last week, Marshall said she agreed with that. And I totally agree with it too. The thing to do is get your ideas straight, then marinate yourself in the literature. So you basically get a draft of what you're going to do. And it might be quite thin. I mean, when you read it, it's quite thin. You might have a square bracket saying, I need a bit more here or something. You can do that. But then you can just drop material in from the literature. And it may actually cause you to change your views, but it's unlikely. It's more likely that you'll enrich your draft as you go on. So don't fog yourself right at the start with some mega literature search. Just see what you think, see what you think.
There's some brilliant advice there, and I think a lot of it I can actually apply to my new writing project. So thanks for that.
Well, one of the things you ought to take into account is to eschew speculomania. Don't go mad. Remember that revisionism can wreck chronologies, and including some that may not deserve to be wrecked. So you want to be a little bit careful with that, and don't digress into. I said it. Don't digress into politics and all this sort of things. Don't metricate the past. And the old advice they used to give, I don't know whether they still do, when you're writing an essay, is define your terms right near the beginning and be critical. So it's all standard stuff really. But I haven't really got any basis to be authority to say any of this. But I'm going to give you one of my. I've got just a couple more. One of my pet hates is summaries that aren't summaries. They say things like such and such will be discussed, and you just want to poke their eyes out. I want to know a summary. I don't want to know what you blooming going to tell us. It's like the contents page, isn't it? It's just rubbish. And there's a few sort of small points. Is that when you insert material into a quotation, first of all, you'd be meticulous with that quotation. But sometimes you do have to insert a material to make it into a proper sentence and so forth. You know, don't be clumsy and illiterate. Listen to what the original thing said. I've seen insertions which are so painful because the original cadence of the sentence was really quite beautiful, and then some clumsy twit puts a square brackets in, and it's like changing down to first on the motorway, and you just think, oh, come on. Don't you have any true poetry? One of the things, I've said this before, is that authors should help their readers to pronounce things. When you've got a really difficult thing to say, just tell them how you pronounce it in a really simple way. And that, it's, oh dear. And I'm near the end now. And some people say, you read in historical things. I mean, this lady, Helen Carr's written a fine book on the 14th century and all that. And she doesn't make this mistake, but other people do. When they say you read about 4 paragraphs on from the, when the date is specified, and then they say in the same year, and you go, what year are we in? You just got to be kind to the reader and don't over punctuate. That one where you've got peas, carrots, and cabbage. Well, if you're in the Oxford University Press, that's peas, comma, carrots, comma, and cabbage. What is that second comma doing? It's absolutely no reason. Don't over punctuate. I'll give you my final point. I know. It's so when people say, I watched a video, in fact, on when Homer was writing, the Iliad. And it was very good. It was a good thing. But I mean, my head was whirling after about 10 minutes because he was talking about, centuries BC. And you just think, if you've got, let's just say AD at the moment, 800s and 1600s do not require mental arithmetic, while 9th century and 17th century do. You have to, and they have an extra syllable as well. And it's obfuscatory. BC centuries are particularly confusing. So if you want to say something, just say, this person lived in the 800s or the 900s. Don't say the 9th century or the 10th century, because everybody goes, hang on, 10th century. Just don't do it. I don't know why this guy did it on the video, but my head was in a whirl after a bit. Anyway, there's a few, tips, not really principles, but tips.
I think I agree with you on the hundreds. I think that makes perfect sense. But I have a confession to make. I do put a comma before the word "and" quite often.
Sometimes it's important to put in a comma, but mostly it isn't. No, it depends if you want. You've got to make sure that things aren't grouped together. No, sometimes you don't want to be dogmatic about this, but fundamentally we over punctuate.
Okay, brilliant.
We over punctuate, and I don't know why. We also use "the" too often. We don't need "the." Well, I mean,
it's not the National CV of Britain. It's National CV of Britain.
Yeah, it should have been. If I'd been completely consistent, that's exactly what I should have done. That's my one inconsistency, because my PhD thesis had no "the," and I've done a couple of books, as I said, irrelevant to this, but they have no definite article. But the National CV is my mea culpa. I failed. I failed to do without a "the."
Okay, brilliant. Right. Okay. Just a quick look in the chat box here, because there's many comments and 1 or 2 questions. Please remember, everyone, if you've got a question, put them in capitals so I know it's a question. It's very hard to search through all these comments. Here's one from Hugh Evans, who has asked, is Lord Tadley a national treasure? Now, I think I might run a poll on this week, everyone. So it'll be quite a simple poll, yes or no. I'll be voting yes, but I'll leave that up to you. Okay. Marshall has commented, the very best example that I know of how scholars should think and conduct themselves is a novel, Gaudy Night, by Dorothy L. Sayers, who was herself a true scholar. Haven't come across that name, Marshall. Sorry about that.
Well,
Do
Dorothy
you
L.
know?
Sayers, no, she's very well known. I haven't actually heard of that particular novel, though.
Okay, brilliant.
Excellent.
Um,
You're about to do Jack the Ripper, but why are you not writing that up as a non-fiction thing? Why are you going to do fiction? Fiction is made up, but you have this huge revelation. Why are you doing it as fiction?
there are probably about 10,000 Jack the Ripper non-fiction books out there already. There are very few fictional books. So it was my co-author's idea to go down the fictional route, but my main job in this project is to gather the facts, do the research, and make sure that everything that we're putting into the book is factual. So I suppose it's a historical novel, I suppose you could say.
It sounds like it. It's good. I think you should
Okay.
write. I think you should. I didn't realise you weren't going to do a non-fiction thing. I think you should do a non-fiction. But on the other hand, I think you ought to sell the film rights. So you can write it as a screenplay. That would be a good thing.
I've got the basic arc of the story, and believe you me, there are some moments in the story that are very Hollywood-esque, shall we say, that would transmit to the screen really, really well.
Yeah, sell it for about £500,000. That's
funnily enough, that was the figure that I already had in my head. Thanks, thanks for the confirmation. That would be nice. Andrew Christie has said the name Shakespeare may be a nod to mystics as to how the stories were written, or rather perceived, much like Newton's apple. Any comment, John?
Well, Shakespeare is, of course, Athena, who shook her spear, and so that's very good. But I think Newton's apple was actually true. He came up with it late in life, but he had a female relative, who recounted it too. So I'm actually up for Newton's apple, and I'm up for Athena shaking her spear. So thank you very much, Andrew Christie.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. As I understand it, Shakespeare got many of the ideas for his plays and sonnets from Holinshead Chronicle, I think.
Sure. His history plays. Yeah. That's absolutely right.
Macbeth was definitely one of them.
And whatever one, King Lear. Oh, King Lear. Whatever one King Lear's in, King Lear, and so on. Yeah, no, he got it from Holinshead. But he was a great one for, borrowing other people's stories. I don't blame him. I mean, why not?
And just one final point on Shakespeare. Adrian Gilbert, we were talking about this in the car the other day, and I think that he favours Mary Sidney as the author, and he's not the only one that does.
Mary Sidney was involved. I mean, Francis Bacon was involved. There was a whole bunch of them. When the Earl of Oxford died, I think, was it 1604 or something, his son-in-law spent the next 10 years finishing off the plays, which is why some of them are actually written in slightly different form of blank verse. And the Spanish ambassador wanted to enlist him as a recusant Catholic, and he said it was completely pointless because he was doing two plays a year. And of course, no play has ever. This is the Earl of Derby, I think, and there's no play ever been written by Earl of Derby. He took his father-in-law. I mean, that's a son-in-law. That's a heck of a son-in-law. Right, finish my plays for me. And he did. That's where we got the first folio in 1623. It's a wonderful story.
Brilliant. Okay. Apparently, Andrew has said you can watch Ralph talking about the paper on Tom Nelson's podcast. I'll look that up. Thank you very much for that. Here's a question, I think. Daniela Holland. When do you think the book will be out? Can't wait to read it. Blimey, that's the first question I've ever received. Brilliant.
Don't commit yourself.
We're aiming for 1 year. And I think if it does get done that quickly, it will be probably a miracle. I think it'll probably take longer than that, but that's the plan anyway. Thank you for asking, Daniela.
I'm sorry to tell you that it's got 2 years written all over it, so it's going to take you longer than you think.
Probably. The most important thing is I want to do the best job possible. So,
well done.
Okay, let's get back to the Scholars of Albion, John. So, I was going to ask you about who you think was the first British scholar, but I'm guessing now that would be the Venerable Bede that we spoke about.
No. I'm going to bring up my mirror. I'm going to bring my mirror in a moment. No, the number one scholar, in my view, is a chap called Abaris, Abaris. Now, you can find him in all sorts of ancient Greek sources, and he's described as a Hyperborean, that's us in Britain, and he's a high priest of, the spherical temple of Apollo, which is, of course, Stonehenge. And they fall on hard times a bit, and he decides to go around the ancient world soliciting donations, like and subscribe, that kind of stuff. And he goes and who does he see? He sees Pythagoras, and he is overwhelmed by the experience of seeing Pythagoras. And I suppose I'm just trying to think when we're out. I think we're in the 500, around about 500 BC. You'll notice I didn't say the 6th century. So 500, around about 500 BC. And Abaris is just overwhelmed by the experience of meeting Pythagoras, because they're like soulmates, spiritual soulmates. So this chap comes from Hyperborea. But Hyperborea, which is us, had a long-standing relationship with Delos. I think it's Delos in Greece, and they used to. Sorry, somebody's appeared at my window. It's always a disturbing moment when somebody appears on your terrace. It's actually my wife, so that's okay.
That's right.
So they a long-standing relationship with ancient Greece. I mean, going back hundreds of years. Now, at this moment, I'm going to use my magic mirror, because I'm going to show you a book that was published in 1974 and is quite famous in its way, I think. I don't know if you can see that. So what we've got there is The Sphinx and the Megaliths by John Ivamy. Okay.
Don't know that one. Yeah.
Oh, well, I think it's quite the forerunner of many of the megalithic things. I mean, I gave you the antiquarians, and I see, we've got Alexander Thom and Anne Macaulay, and latterly we've got Hugh Evans and Melissa, and I see them as more antiquarians than actually archaeologists. And I have to say, the antiquarian tradition it just captivates me, because it's so brilliant and charming. It's just wonderful. Anyway, so we've got John Ivamy, and what John Ivamy did was notice. So we're in 1974, so it's sort of a bit before. I don't know. No, about the same time as John Michel, really. He noticed that they used the same measurements on the Giza Plateau and at Stonehenge and Avebury. And he surmised that the ancient Egyptians had come over here and told us how to do it. And I'm afraid he got the arrow completely the wrong way around. The arrow goes from Britain to ancient Egypt, not the other way around. But anyway, I could give you, we can all get chapter and verse on that. But if you remember, I've got the high priest of Stonehenge going to see Pythagoras and tap him for some money for the renovation. And what happens is, and so what John Ivamy tells us is that the meeting of the Briton Abaris with Pythagoras of Samos must be reckoned amongst the great encounters of history. These two men of intellect surpassed all others in their knowledge of science, religion, and mathematics, and both alike concealed their knowledge from public view under a cloak of supernatural mystery and stuff about Apollo and all this sort of stuff. And that was an epoch-making meeting between the first British scholar. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, you said scholarship is about communication. Well, I tell you, there's 5 books attributed to Abaris. And Abaris is, I don't know whether he wrote any of them, but he definitely did. He was a fantastic bloke, and he pops up all over the place. And there's some mythology and legend and all the rest of it. And because of the mythology and legend, some people say he didn't exist. Well, I tell you, he did exist. So that's good fun. So the first British scholar is Abaris, and it's 500 BC.
And John, according to Andrew Christie, he pops up in the Colburn There's a chapter in the British books of the Colburn attributed to Abaris.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Andrew Christie. I had no idea. Yeah. That is brilliant.
John, can I ask you, is he on National CV of Britain? Which I'm saying in English accent to avoid the word "the" now.
Your sound is
your picture's breaking up quite dramatically as well. I'm not too sure why. Yes, it is.
Is it? Oh well,
it is on mine. Who knows? Hopefully, you can still see and hear us, everyone.
Well, I can, and I think Andrew has come up with a
definitely
there. Absolutely.
Hugh Evans has said Apollo was from Hyperborea.
He was the Hyperborean god. Yeah, he was our god. He didn't come from Greece. We didn't get this from Greece. We got this independently.
That's very interesting because the Druids worshipped Apollo, didn't they? Which I've never really understood, but that makes sense now. Brilliant.
Yeah, well, also Hermes. I mean, we didn't get any of these from Greece. This is where John Ivamy got the arrow in the wrong direction. Comyn's Beaumont spectacularly got the arrow in the right direction, but it was a very big arrow.
Yeah, definitely.
So one has to think about that.
It's a shame some of his books, Comyn's Beaumont, they're so expensive to buy and so rare and hard to find some of them. Because I've read the most famous one, which is The Great Deception, but I think that's
not the most famous one. I think you've got to go
really?
to. No, you've got to go. Well, he's got a couple, but I mean, prehistoric Britain.
Yes.
I think I've got all of them actually. You're right. The thing about this space is it's a book-strewn landscape, and it costs you an arm and a leg. You don't make money by indulging yourself in ancient British history. It costs you money.
Yes.
Nobody makes money out of it. I mean, I'd be interested to know if anybody does. I think there's probably a couple of people who do. Adrian might. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly.
I hope he does.
So do I. Okay, let's round things up, John. So throughout our discussion today, you have been mentioning scholarly principles. So do you have a good modern example of good scholarship?
I do, and I've brought it here with my magic mirror. Brilliant. And this is the dawn of everything. You notice that superfluous "the" there. It should have been dawn of everything. But anyway, A New History of Humanity by David Graeber and David Wengrow. And they're in British London universities. Unfortunately, David Graeber died 3 weeks after the writing of this, when they finished the writing. So in fact, only David Wengrow. And what it is a revisionist history of Britain. And it says on the front here, somebody's put, it's an intellectual feast, and it is. And so the old idea is that we were all running around in animal skins, and then we planted up and we became pastoralists and agriculturalists and all this. And then we founded cities, and it all became very hierarchical, and we had wars and all that. And David Graeber and David Wengrow beg to differ. They say, well, look at all these different organizations. We've got cities here without hierarchies and without priesthoods, and we've got hunter-gatherers who come together to build things. And it's a much more flexible and indeed creative version of human history. And it's come from, I mean, David Graeber is actually American, but David Wengrow is British. And it's a fantastic work of scholarship. I mean, it's about 500. I mean, the text matter is, I don't know what it is, 520 odd pages long. And then you've got, you can use EndNote technology, as you well know, in the word processing. And they've got, sort of enormous amounts of EndNotes. So you've actually got a parallel book. So it's one of the things you can do these days is you can write a book, and then via the EndNotes, you can provide a sort of parallel book. You can have another go at it. It's brilliant. It's a very clever book, and it's fantastic. And
what's it called again?
Scholarship. The Dawn of Everything.
It sounds a bit like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Well, it is. It does cover practically everything. But I tell you, you'll gape on every page when you read this. You'll go, I didn't know that.
Oh, I'll look into that. Thanks for that, John.
Well, it is a mighty work. You know, you have to set aside part of your life to read it. It's not one of these, you know, it's not Jack the Ripper. It's not Jack the Ripper.
Oh, I beg to differ on that one, John.
Well, I think
you can lose yourself for several years in researching Jack the Ripper because there's so many.
That's true.
Yeah,
I think. I just. It troubles me that you're going to do a fictional version. I wish you'd just do a non-fiction version.
Well, perhaps I will afterwards. I mean, it's my co-author's idea, and the way she's described how she wants to flesh out the plot. And we're very keen to keep it as historically factual as possible. So I'm quite hopeful. I think people will enjoy it, and maybe I'll write the non-fiction version afterwards. But
you could do an article,
yeah, definitely. Okay, John, I think I'm getting this right when I say that you'll be joining me again next week
as a summarizer, as a commentary, rather than
a
main interviewer. Because I think your main interviewee is here, isn't it?
That's quite correct. Yes. So next week there's a freeway, which will be very interesting. That'll be a first, I think, on here. So Hugh Evans will be joining me. He'll be in the hot seat, if you like, and he'll be discussing two very important locations on the star maps of Gwynedd that we haven't previously discussed. I would tell you where they are, but I can't pronounce them, unfortunately, yet. So, but that should be something very much to look forward to. Okay. Please like the video, and please do subscribe if you're new around here, because we're trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers by Christmas. That would be an amazing achievement. So, and we're very, keen to push this history forward and to get more people listening to it. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. Thank you to John for joining me today. It's been absolutely brilliant, as always, listening to you. And we'll both see you next week. Thanks for watching.
Cheers, Ed.